A millionaire CEO I never knew paid for my mother's funeral. My mother was gone, and the grief was just this suffocating weight on our family. It was a fog so thick you couldn't see your own hand in front of your face. But on top of the heartache, a colder reality was setting in. We had no idea how we were going to afford her funeral. We felt lost, completely adrift. And then, right in the middle of our darkest moment, something happened that we still can't really wrap our heads around. The entire bill was paid by a complete stranger. Section 1. The weight of loss. My mother, Maria, wasn't a complicated woman. She found joy in the simple things: the first gardenias blooming in the spring, the smell of garlic and olive oil sizzling in her kitchen, the sound of her grandkids laughing. Her love was a physical presence in our lives, like a steady, warm blanket. When she passed, the cold was immediate and shocking. The world just felt sharper, harsher, without her in it. But grief doesn't exactly pause for practicalities. While we were trying to navigate this new, quiet world, a different kind of anxiety started creeping in. The phone calls began. The first was to the funeral home. I remember sitting at our kitchen table, my dad silent beside me, a notebook open to a blank page. We started talking through the arrangements, the service, the casket, the burial plot. And then came the numbers. The director was gentle, but the numbers were firm. It was like a punch to the gut. The average cost for a funeral in the U.S. can be anywhere from $9,000 to over $20,000, and sometimes a lot more depending on what you choose. For our family, that number might as well have been $1 million. My mother had been sick for a long time, and her medical bills had already wiped out what little savings we had. My dad was on a fixed income. I was working a job that barely covered my own family's bills. The weight of our loss was suddenly doubled by the crushing weight of this impossible cost. We were facing a terrible choice: give my mother the farewell she deserved, or protect our family from financial ruin. There's this profound pressure to do the right thing for a loved one, a feeling that you have to provide a decent funeral, even when you can't afford it. That pressure was eating us alive. Section 2. The impossible phone call. A few days later, my phone rang. The caller ID said it was the funeral director, Mr. Harrison. My stomach clenched. I was sure he was calling for a deposit, the one conversation I'd been dreading. I took a deep breath and answered. "Hello? Hi, I'm calling for the family of Maria," he said, his voice calm and professional. "I just wanted to give you an update on the arrangements." I braced myself. "Okay," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Is there a problem?" There was a pause. "No, not at all," he said, and his tone had shifted. He almost sounded confused himself. "Actually, it's quite the opposite. I'm calling to let you know that the balance for your mother's services has been settled, in full." I just stood there, frozen, the phone pressed hard to my ear. "What do you mean, settled? We haven't paid anything." "I know," Mr. Harrison said. "It was paid for this morning. An anonymous benefactor contacted us. The payment was wired from a foundation with very clear instructions: cover all expenses, and under no circumstances were we to disclose their identity to the family." I actually had to sit down. My mind was racing. Was this a mistake? Some kind of cruel scam? Who would do this? We didn't know anyone with that kind of money. Our circle was small, full of hard-working people just like us. It made absolutely no sense. I started peppering Mr. Harrison with questions, my voice rising with disbelief and a strange bubbling hope. Who was it? What was the foundation's name? Why? He held firm, just as he'd been told. "I'm truly sorry," he said, and he sounded like he meant it. "My hands are tied. All I can tell you is that your mother's funeral is completely taken care of. You and your family don't owe us a thing. You can just focus on honoring her." When I hung up, I started to cry. But for the first time in days, they weren't just tears of sorrow. They were tears of profound, earth-shattering relief and overwhelming, baffling mystery. Section 3. The investigation begins. The funeral was beautiful. It was everything my mother would have wanted. We were able to get the flowers she loved and play the music she cherished, all without that black cloud of debt hanging over us. But through the entire service, one question echoed in my mind, a question my whole family was asking. Who? After the service, we went right back to Mr. Harrison. We pleaded with him. My father, a proud man who wasn't used to asking for anything, was visibly emotional. "Please," he said, "we just want to thank them. We need to know who did this for us." Mr. Harrison looked genuinely sympathetic, but his answer was the same. The donation was a wire transfer from an entity called the Polaris Foundation. The instructions were ironclad: absolute anonymity. He couldn't risk his professional integrity by breaking that trust, and so our investigation began. Polaris, the North Star. It sounded so hopeful. The first thing I did when I got home was Google the Polaris Foundation. The results were a frustrating mess. There were dozens of small, unrelated organizations, local charities, even a consulting firm with a similar name. Nothing matched. There was no big public-facing foundation with a clear mission or a list of board members. It felt like chasing a ghost. My brother was convinced it was someone from our old neighborhood, someone who'd made it big and remembered my mother's kindness. We made a list and spent days making awkward calls, only to be met with confusion. My aunt thought it had to be a distant relative. We spent a week digging through old photo albums and ancestry websites. Another dead end. Every path we took just led to a wall. It was maddening. Section 4, Chasing Shadows. The weeks started to blur into months. The sharp edges of grief began to soften, but the mystery was always there, a constant hum in the background of our lives. It kind of became a family obsession. At every get-together, the conversation would eventually turn to the angel, which is what my dad had started calling our benefactor. What would you have done? When a miracle just lands on your doorstep, how do you simply accept it and move on? We couldn't. I, for one, couldn't let it go. I spent late nights falling down internet rabbit holes, searching for any combination of Polaris Foundation, anonymous donation, and funeral expenses. Most of what I found were warnings about scams, which for a second made me question everything. But the money was real. The kindness was real. The only real clue we had was the name Polaris, a guiding star. That had to mean something. I started looking into major philanthropists, searching for anyone who used celestial themes in their work. Nothing. It felt completely hopeless. We were starting to accept that we would just have to live with not knowing, to carry this beautiful unanswered question with us forever. We had to learn to be content with the kindness itself, without needing to see the face behind it. Section 5, The Revelation. About a year after my mother passed, I was scrolling through an online business journal, the kind of thing I'd normally skip right over. The headline was about innovators in biotechnology, and halfway through the article I saw it. The profile was about a woman named Eleanor Vance, a brilliant and famously private CEO of a major biotech firm. She'd made a fortune developing revolutionary medical treatments. The article touched on her philanthropy, which she conducted with fierce privacy. It said she funneled her donations through a small private trust she'd set up years ago, one with no public profile. The journalist, who had clearly done some digging, said she called it the Polaris Foundation. My heart just stopped. I read the sentence again. And again. The Polaris Foundation. It was her. The article explained her philosophy. She believed true charity was an act of silent empathy, a way of providing a guiding light, a north star to someone lost in the dark without ever asking for recognition. The journalist speculated this came from her own past. She had apparently grown up in poverty and once received a life-changing act of kindness from a stranger that let her finish her education. She was, in her own quiet way, paying it forward. I had never heard of Eleanor Vance. My mother had never heard of her. There was no connection. She wasn't from our town, not a distant relative, not an old friend. She was, just as we first thought, a complete stranger, a millionaire CEO who, for a reason I'll never know, decided to reach out and lift up a family she'd never met. Maybe she saw my mother's obituary online by chance. Maybe a story of need somewhere just moved her. The foundation is as private as the article claimed, and there's no public record of a CEO named Eleanor Vance I could ever point to definitively, but in my gut I knew. I had found our angel. Conclusion: a legacy of kindness. Finding that article didn't close the book on our story. In a way, it opened a new one. The mystery of who was replaced by the much bigger mystery of why. Why us? I think the answer is that it wasn't really about us at all. It was about the simple, powerful idea that we're all connected and that we have a chance to be a light for each other when the world goes dark. Eleanor Vance, or whoever our angel was, didn't just pay for a funeral. She gave us something so much more valuable. In a moment of total despair, she restored our faith in humanity. She reminded us that there is goodness in the world, quiet and unseen, working in the background. Her kindness became a part of my mother's legacy, a final story of the kind of grace she always believed in. It has changed how our family moves through the world. We try to be more like her, to pay forward that incredible gift in small ways. We can all be someone's angel, their Polaris. If this story touched you, I want to ask you to do one small thing today. You don't have to be a millionaire CEO, just find one small way to lighten someone else's load. Buy a coffee for the person behind you in line, offer a word of encouragement, or just listen to someone who needs to be heard. You might never see the ripple effects of that single act, but I'm living proof that those ripples can change a life forever. Have you ever experienced an unexpected moment of kindness from a stranger? Please, share your story in the comments. Let's fill this space with reminders of the good that's all around us.